your life or your livelihood. That's the chance being taken every day by Coloradans who are at high risk for COVID-19, people who still have to make a paycheck. The pandemic has peaked here, we hope, including in our prison system. Yet knowing the danger, families continue to press the governor to look at releasing some older, nonviolent offenders. Colorado sports teams are sitting today, hoping that you will join them in taking a stand against systemic racism. I'll have a word about the ugly reaction from some fans. And they aren't ugly, they're just gargoyles. The owner of the famous Gargoyle house is moving. We'll find out if they're leaving town too. Next. So many people want to think that their gathering will be the exception. The COVID-19 won't show up at their party, at their event, their big day. After an outbreak tied to a wedding in Colorado, our Anusha Roy talked with wedding vendors who go to event after event and tell her that a lot of people are very careful. And some people make them nervous.
Carrie Giha is as open about her love for photography.
They've searched for a wedding photographer for years and they found you.
As she is about being nervous to work right now.
I have lung problems anyway. I have like one that kind of works and one that doesn't work at all.
Carrie gets tested before every wedding, and weddings make up as much as 80% of her business.
I wear my mask every time I got a new lens so I can shoot from further away. So I've seen some older guests wearing them if they're a little nervous about being there, and they have supplied masks at the wedding, but generally not many people wear them.
The state health department knows of one documented outbreak connected to a wedding in Jefferson County on August 7th, where 4 people from Colorado tested positive for COVID-19. Carrie isn't the only one asking everyone to follow the rules.
Right. I think guests are coming from different locations where there aren't mask mandates, different states. And so they're not aware of the policies that are coming out. And so again, as a vendor, that may be part of our job.
The Colorado Events Alliance was created because of COVID. The group put on an event at Sculpture Park with empty tables, buffets, and bars to make a point that the industry is hurting, and event workers want clarification on the rules and best practices.
We have state guidance currently, but with all the variances within the counties, there is confusion from county to county understanding what the guidance is, especially gathering size. You know, unfortunately, I think there are maybe some who work around those rules. We definitely don't suggest that they do that. Mostly where we're seeing that is through private homes.
As for the wedding in Jeffco, the 4 people were either tested or started showing symptoms after the wedding. And the health department said that there could be more cases, but either people did not get testing and get follow-up, or the health department was having trouble getting some of the information to basically track the cases down. But we were told, Kyle, that everyone who did test positive was related in some capacity or the other.
And Anusha, what do we know about the staff at that wedding, the vendors? Were they working outside the system, or were they following the rules?
Yeah, the health department said that all of the staff at that particular event were wearing masks. They were doing the proper social distancing. And I do want to point out that in a lot of cases, the people working these events are doing the right thing. As for that wedding in Jefferson County, the health department said that no one was cited in this case or faced any kind of consequences. And the State Department does have this ongoing conversation when it comes to protocols and guidelines, and said all of their rules are both applying to public and private properties for these kinds of events.
All right. Celebrate safely, Colorado. Anusha, thank you. Denver's COVID-19 restrictions could ease on down the road so long as case numbers keep improving. Mayor Michael Hancock floated asking the state to loosen the city's regulations so long as current case counts hold for another week or so. Positivity rate statewide, our 7-day average, it crept up slightly yesterday. It's now at 2.77%. That's the percentage of tests are coming back hot. You want it as low as possible. We are still well below what the experts suggest and down from where we were a week and 2 weeks ago. Hospitalizations dropped today. 131 COVID-positive patients in Colorado's hospitals, down 15 from the day before. 7-day average, now about 145. That's a drop of almost 50 patients per day from where it was 2 weeks ago. They're convicted of nonviolent crimes and sentenced to serve time in prison. Now, though, their families are concerned that COVID-19 could be a death sentence. There's a renewed push this week by families trying to convince the governor to release some selected inmates early because of the particular risk the pandemic poses in prisons. Here's Mark Salinger.
For the Colorado Department of Corrections, Ronald Johnson is inmate number 53475. For Amber Johnson, he's dad.
It's painful to have somebody in prison that you love right now.
In May of 1999, a Denver judge sentenced him to serve 96 years in prison for a multitude of charges, including organized crime. Amber says her father stole credit cards and checks to support a drug habit, but never committed any violent crimes.
Since COVID has been here, it's really kind of a nightmare.
More than 20 years after he began serving time, Amber fears COVID-19 may have handed him a death sentence.
He's 62 years old. He has asthma and high blood pressure, and he's just more at risk for COVID than others.
We spoke today with the families of 5 inmates in Colorado, working with the ACLU to advocate for the release of nonviolent inmates. At least 1,388 cases have been confirmed among inmates and staff members at prisons and jails across the state since the pandemic began. At least 5 inmates have died.
The pandemic is no excuse to let criminals out.
In May, Governor Polis was asked about releasing inmates because of COVID. We asked the governor's office today if Polis is considering any action on decarceration, but did not receive a response.
He is not a violent criminal.
The Department of Corrections says Ronald Johnson is up for parole in 2027.
It's always been a fear of mine that he would die in prison.
His sentence is set to end in 2087.
As simple as someone sneezing around him could give him a disease that could accelerate his death.
Now, back in March, the governor did sign an executive order to try and limit the spread of COVID-19 in prisons and jails. In part, that gave the Department of Correction more authority to determine parole. That executive order has since expired. Kyle.
So, Mark, they're talking to the governor because of the particular power that he has over these cases.
Yeah, the Department of Corrections says that they don't have any power when it comes to individual releases like that. The governor, of course, has the power to grant clemency. Now, just before we went on TV, the governor's office got back to me and said that they couldn't comment on any of the questions that I asked today because of ongoing legal issues.
All right. Mark Salinger reporting as the wind whistles through the pines of the Salinger estate. Tonight's next question comes from Beth. She wants to know if speed limits in school zones still apply if the schools aren't holding classes. That was an interesting question. Beth had not considered that. So we reached out to Denver police on that today, and here's what they told us. DPD does take into account whether kids are actually present at the school when they enforce school zone speed limits and the double fines that go along with them. And DPD told us they're working with Denver Public Schools to make sure that the school zone lights are only flashing if there are kids on campus. Denver Public Schools doesn't plan on having students return to in-person learning completely until mid-October. But there are some exceptions if you see school zones flashing around the city. Long story short, there are in-person programs at 55 schools in Denver right now. So police are enforcing school zone speed limits at any of those places, not at the other 152. Also, just from a common sense perspective, I'm no trafficologist, but maybe just slow down in school zones just to be safe. The Colorado Avalanche spoke together today as a team with other NHL teams, saying that they are postponing upcoming playoff games, trying to give America some space and time to think about racial injustice. This is a nationwide movement by athletes. The Nuggets playoff game today isn't happening for the same reason. And the Rockies, after they played last night, are sitting out tonight as pro athletes across America say in unison, no justice, no games. If the athletes sitting out games wanted to expose racism in America, they have done so. And what it sounded like was, shut up and play. Don't mix politics and sports. This demand that athletes, often black, perform with their bodies but don't get to lift their voices has ugly roots in a shameful era in American history. When sports and politics mix, eyes and minds open, and the world remembers. 1947, Jackie Robinson endures taunts and threats for daring to play alongside and against white players. 1972, Roberto Clemente goes along on a trip to deliver aid supplies so that they couldn't be stolen by a corrupt government, the day that his plane crashed. And 1936, when Jesse Owens showed Hitler that his so-called master race couldn't even win the 100-meter race. The beauty of sports is that you get to decide who you're going to cheer for. America's athletes are declaring that racism and injustice are their opponents. Which side are you going to cheer for? Denver is all about that patio life, even in the art scene. We're not throwing shade, we're embracing it. That's the most Colorado thing we saw today. The owner of the famous Gargoyle House in Cherry Hills Village is saying goodbye. How about the stone-faced friends? That's next. So it's been a little while since we played one of our favorite games around here. What do you say? Remember that from before the pandemic? Tonight we're tracking down the pronunciation of a valley in Rocky Mountain National Park. Pretty prominent place in the park. It's there on your screen. Our viewer Linda says she's always had trouble with this one. So we called up the rangers at Rocky Mountain National Park and asked, what do you say?
Kawanichi Valley, and Kawanichi means coyote in Arapaho. One thing that's kind of ironic based on the question that you all are receiving as how to pronounce it is they picked Kawanichi because they thought that was easier to pronounce than some of the other native language that represented that area.
Kawanichi. All right, what other place names in Colorado have you heard pronounced more ways than one? Maybe you're thinking that there are very fine pronunciations on both sides. Email your suggestions to next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag #HeyNext.
Our summer sizzle finally coming to an end after 17 days in a row with 90-degree temperatures. A couple of thunderstorms firing up in the mountains, rolling off into the foothills, making their way onto the plains. So look out for a little rain tonight. Otherwise, we're looking at partly cloudy skies and temperatures falling to the low 60s, 60s across the plains with 50s mainly up in the mountains. A cold front pushes in overnight. This helps to drop off daytime highs dramatically tomorrow and also brings us a chance for a few scattered showers tomorrow afternoon. It looks really good tomorrow morning, and then by about 3-4 o'clock, these thunderstorms move in with really heavy rain going in southeastern Colorado and possibly severe cells. Temperatures tomorrow on the cool side at 84, 80s for northeastern Colorado, 70s up in the mountains. The cool off continues as we head toward the weekend.
The most Colorado thing we saw today is the best kind of shade. The kind that helped the creators of a mural at Broadway and Blake keep working in the baking sun this week. They hauled a patio umbrella up on their forklift. This might be an OSHA thing, but nobody narc on them, please. The mural looks really nice, too, I will just say. Broadway and Blake. If you see something that just screams Colorado, next@9news.com is the email or the hashtag #HeyNext. Today's expected to be the end of what felt like a month straight in the 90s. It probably was not actually a month straight, but I'm a busy guy, 2 kids at home, too lazy to look today. As we welcome our new, slightly cooler temperatures in the 80s, meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen got to feeling poetic again.
Corey Reppenhagen is on the weather beat.
17 days in a row, tempers and patience melting. Cold front on Monday.
That was Corey Reppenhagen on the weather beat.
And it really brings a lot of joy to people, which is why I continued to do it.
She's moving. So what to do with the gargoyles that gave so many Coloradans so much joy? An update to one of your favorite stories next. Always sad when an old friend moves away. Our friend Unita Rowan has sold her home and is moving to Canada. You're thinking, who, what? It's the home that next viewers might remember as the famous Cherry Hills Village Gargoyle House. Place amused a lot of people over the years. 9 News photojournalist Corky Shaw was curious whether the gargoyles are moving too.
What's been so amazing all of these years are the drivers by. Hi, my name is Unita Rowan, And I live at the iconic Gargoyle house, but not for long because we have sold the house and we will be leaving the Gargoyles behind starting September 1st. The Gargoyles were definitely landmarks. I bought the house 22 years ago, and because it's on a busy street, it's always been difficult for people to find our house. And I put these two up on the brick posts, then I can tell people to look for the Gargoyles. And somehow that transitioned into monthly outfits for 18 years. And it really brings a lot of joy to people, which is why I continued to do it. Just last week when the moving truck was here, somebody left a really lovely handwritten note on the windshield of one of their movers saying they were sorry to see us go. I don't think the new owners will be continuing the tradition, sadly. Well, I thought the best thing to leave the gargoyle with for the final costume that would be great for several months is a sign that simply says, vote, plus a mask. So we'll see how long that stays on them.
Final statement from the gargoyle. Hey, she made it. We've been following the Colorado Trail journey of Patricia Cameron on this program, and she has finished her hike, Denver to Durango, nearly 500 miles up and over all those mountain passes. The outdoors is her passion, and it's the project of her nonprofit Blackpackers, which breaks down economic barriers that keep a more diverse group of Coloradans from getting out to explore nature. And it also aims to eventually find interested folks jobs in the outdoors industry. Based on your feedback, every single time we mention her story, you too have been following her every step. Congratulations on finishing the Colorado Trail. We may have found this state's coolest middle schooler, but we're biased, just like Mike3274863 said on Twitter. Which reminds me, your feedback is also next. They say young people don't watch the news because it's true, with limited exceptions, and we love the exceptional around here. So Taylor, I just have to say, you are exceptional. Showing up to the first day of remote learning with our background as your background. This is at Horizons in Boulder. Taylor's mom, Mary Beth, says the kids didn't get it because why would they? The kids don't watch the news. But apparently the teacher thought it was funny. And Taylor, that's a smart move on the first day of school to make the teacher like you. Mary Beth tells us that her daughter Taylor used to watch Rachel Maddow, but has now switched to the local news. And Taylor, I will say, we are honored to have you watch. Got a note in tonight on the issue of politics and sports from John, who says, when I buy a sporting event ticket, I didn't buy a political opinion on anything. That's correct, John. Nor did you buy a muzzle to place around the mouth of any athlete who disagrees with you about politics. Those athletes work for the franchises. They perform pretty valuable service. So let's see what kind of sway they have.